Hello and welcome to the Baby Loss Podcast with me, Gabriella Austin. This podcast is for bereaved parents like myself to share their story around baby loss and miscarriage. In this two-part episode, Mim tells the stories of her son Lenny, who died at 40 weeks, and his brother Bhai, who died at 18 weeks. Mim and her husband Roy have created a blog called Lenny's Legacy and will cycle the length of New Zealand recording a documentary in memory of their sons. Baby loss is unfortunately more common than people think and certainly more common than discussed. Whilst I would like to raise awareness around this taboo subject, my main aim is to provide parents with a safe place to talk about their babies, wherever they may be in their journey. There is no judgment here, and every journey is different. Welcome to the second series where we continue to tell the stories of our babies gone too soon. Trigger warning for this episode: discussion on stillbirth, baby loss, miscarriage, COVID-19, CPR, medical termination, and contains explicit content.
After Lenny was born, I remember being like a few months of thinking, I can't imagine ever having another baby, ever loving another baby. Just didn't even pop into my head. And then a switch just flipped and it was like, we need to have another baby. And I knew that nothing and nobody would ever replace Lenny, but I just really wanted him to have a sibling. And because we knew that he died from cord entanglement, we knew that my pregnancy wasn't a risk.
Yeah.
And so we actually got pregnant with Bhai, Lenny's brother, about a year after we got pregnant with Lenny. So their due dates were quite aligned. And yeah, again, and you know, I felt nervous and I felt anxious and I felt quite like almost disengaged at the start, I would say. One thing that was really lovely was that the midwife who looked after us after Lenny died had started a job as a community midwife.
Yeah.
And so she was my community midwife, which just made me feel so looked after. And Lenny was part of every appointment. And
Yes.
She made it so clear on all our notes that to mention Lenny.
Yes.
And again, that pregnancy went swimmingly until 18 and a half weeks, and I started bleeding and I thought, this isn't good. And we went to get checked out and we were told the bleeding looked separate to the pregnancy. And they really checked me out and they like really looked after me, and they offered for me to stay overnight actually. But everything had calmed down and I thought, I don't think I need to be here unless I need to be here. And the next day there was no bleeding, no cramping, no nothing. I thought, okay, it was one off, like we're okay. And then I went to the toilet that evening and I wiped and there was blood, and I just knew. I just knew. And we were driving to the hospital that evening, and I said and Roy said, this is either going to be fine or just not at all. There's no in between. And I didn't say anything, because when we drove to the hospital with Lenny, it was all excitement. We had the car seat in the car and everything. And when we drove to the hospital with Bhai, I just knew. And I can't really explain that, but I just knew in my heart of hearts. And I suppose I'd just got to that point in my pregnancy where I'd started to feel him move like a week before. And I thought, okay, if we get past the 20-week scan, and for me, the third trimester was going to be a bit scary, like near my due date. But I thought I've got past the 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And then like the second trimester is kind of a safe point for me, even though I never really believed in a safe point. But and yeah, so we got to the hospital and I started to miscarry and my waters broke, and then it kind of like everything stopped and we had to have a scan the next day, and we found out, which was really horrible, that there was still a heartbeat but there were no waters at all. Which is apparently a really rare situation, and basically meant that the baby could not live, like could not survive, because there's no water. If there was a little bit, apparently they can regain their waters. And so technically I had to have a termination for medical reasons. I thought I knew everything about baby loss. I did not. I did not know that you might have to terminate a healthy baby that was much wanted. But if I had chosen to wait, then I could have ended up with sepsis. And we're talking about a baby that was not going to live. But it was horrible, and I asked for them to make it very clear on my medical notes what situation we were in. But this was kind of like, it's just more protracted. So when my midwife found out about it, when I say she's saved our life, she came in to the hospital to be with us. She came into that scan, and she came back when I delivered Bhai. And I think if she hadn't have been there, it would have been really traumatic. I mean, it was traumatic.
But yeah.
It would have been
worse.
So
sad.
So yeah, this kind of all happened like over the space of a weekend. So it was a lot quicker with Lenny, like, and we thought, because my waters broke the night when we went back to the hospital on the Saturday night, and we thought that I'd miscarry overnight, and that didn't happen. And then so we had the scan and so on, and I remember saying to Roy, like, I don't think I can meet this baby. So after everything that we'd been through with Lenny, I was like, I don't think and I was just so scared. I was so scared, and like didn't want to acknowledge what was happening. And then, like I said, my amazing midwife came in when we had the scan and was just so supportive around. She said, like, this is just medical terminal, not just, she wasn't diminishing how we felt about having to have a termination. She was, but she was saying, you know, it's not a choice, it's something you're having to do for your health, and it would happen anyway. And she wasn't even meant to be working that day. And she came, she said, like, what we'll do is when you're having contractions, text me and I'll come back. Because even though I'd been through labour, so this is important, and this is why we need so much more awareness about all of this. When they said to us that I was miscarrying, me and Roy are like, yeah, so what's the plan? And they were like, so you've got to deliver the baby. And we were like, no, you don't understand, we've lost a baby in birth, like surely there's another way. And they explained to us that it was too late a gestation for a D&C, and that it was too early a gestation for a C-section, and that would be really, really, really major surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's just something that I didn't really know. I don't know. And then even though I'd given birth to before, I was so scared of the labour, because when I was in labour with Lenny, I was excited, and it was supposed to be happening, and this wasn't something that was supposed to be happening, and how would it feel, and so on. And so I was like absolutely adamant. I was like, I want pain relief, because I just didn't want to feel anything. And again, I was really bad at taking drugs. I think I had like 2 paracetamol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, what on earth? And you know, the physical pain it's just nothing, is it, compared to the emotional?
Mm-hmm.
But having the midwife there, and the way that, like, she was just sat on the bed just talking to us about our dogs and things, and she really wasn't trying to be like, oh, let's ignore the elephant in the room. It was just bringing a bit of calm. I don't know, she just has this amazing presence, and everything was less scary because she was there. And because I know her and I trust her, I said to her, after I delivered Bhai, and thankfully one small mercy was that was quite quick. The labour and delivery was quite quick. So I'd asked her before about what I should do about meeting Bhai, and she said, I think, and my fear was, I didn't know what an 18-and-a-half-week baby might
Would
look
look
like.
Yeah.
And she just said, he's just going to look like a little baby. It's not going to be scary. It's going to look like Lenny, but smaller. And she sort of very gently said, I think you would want to meet him. Based on some of our conversations, I think you would want to. And she came back in after I delivered him, and she just said, look, like, his skin is still very translucent, so he looks quite red, but he's fine. Like, he just looks quite red. And she brought him in, and even at that gestation, like, he just looked so much like his brother. And again, I know you said earlier that you didn't laugh in hospital, and there are things that you look back on and laugh. Like, I've developed such a dark sense of humour since losing the boys. They were like, oh, you know, we can't say for sure whether it's a girl or a boy. I was like, okay. And they brought him in, and me and Roy looking at each other, and we're like, we're pretty sure that's a boy. Pretty clear. Yeah, and so, and like, even at that gestation, he looked like a tiny, tiny little Lenny.
How lovely.
And which was lovely and heartbreaking, because just the thought that we had another little boy on the way this Christmas, and you know that babies don't replace babies, people don't replace people, but the thought that we were having another little boy and at Christmas, and he just looked just like Lenny. And we took pictures this time, and we took pictures with us and as a family, and it's helped me to have some compassion for the Mim and Roy in December 2021 who was sat in that room blindsided by Lenny's death, because for a number of reasons. One, because we made the decisions we made with Bhai because we did have a bit more time.
Yes.
Nothing ever prepares you. You're not like, oh, someone's told me my baby's died, so now I've got this whole plan. Like, nothing ever prepares you. But we did have more time, and I had more time to decide. Like I said, the night before, I said to Roy, "Oh, I can't meet this baby." So we did have more time to think about what we might want to do before he was born. And also the sad, heartbreaking, messed up reality is that I knew what to do because I'd done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And no one should be an expert in how to spend time with a baby who's died. And and they asked what we'd like to name him and whether we'd like to name him, because funnily enough, we were talking just a few weeks before about how confusing a midterm loss is, because it's termed a miscarriage, but it's, you know, that's a fully formed baby, and even though their life isn't viable, or they're not, you don't record them on a birth certificate. It's a confusing. I would never judge anyone who's lost a baby, full stop, but I think midterm losses are complicated for a number of reasons, and I can understand why people would make different decisions and not do the things that we did. You know, it's all in context, isn't it, and based on your experience. So we named him Bhai, which was always going to be his. We didn't, because we didn't know whether he was a boy or a girl, but we'd said that if he was going to be a boy, Bhai was going to be his middle name. And like I said, my mum's Indian, and Bhai means brother in Hindi. So that's the kind of story behind his name. And you know, they did hand and footprints, and yeah, and I made a little bit of piece about my 3 photos of Lenny now, because I've got loads of photos of Bhai and I haven't looked at them yet, and also doesn't make me feel any better about it, doesn't make it any easier. You know, 1 million wouldn't be enough. It doesn't change the reality. And the family photo that we've got, that I was so desperate to have with Lenny, it's just me and Roy looking like utterly broken people. You know, it's not one that's going to be framed on the mantelpiece, let's face it. And we didn't have anyone there both times. But yeah, I think with Bhai we didn't really want anyone there. And with Lenny, it breaks my heart that people didn't meet Lenny. It really breaks my heart, but that is the way that it is. And I think that adds to the loneliness sometimes, because I'm not sure that he feels real to other people, and he's like, they're both so real to us. But yeah, so we recently found out that Bhai died because of a placental abruption, which is like just a random thing that can happen, completely unrelated to Lenny. And it's just, I don't, you know, it's just so hard to kind of understand that 2 random things can happen, random, awful, tragic things can happen in such a short space of time, and that they were both perfectly healthy, and I was perfectly healthy, and
I'm going to say that you're unlucky. I don't know, like, how people, I don't know if people have said that, because people have said that to me before, and it doesn't sound very nice, but like, there are no chances, you know. People have said to me, just, you know, you've been unlucky this time. Well, I don't want to be unlucky this time. Don't want to be unlucky.
It makes you feel like it's hard to trust the world when you lose a baby. I've found, and even more so that both of our losses were so out of the blue, like everything was fine and then it wasn't. And I think particularly when I was pregnant with Bhai, people were like, I know you're worried, but your pregnancy with Lenny was fine and it was just really bad luck, and it's just, you know, that's not going to happen again. And then it did, but in a different way. So yeah, it's just so hard to fathom. And like I said, we've got the website Lenny's Legacy, and I write a blog on there, and I wrote a blog called Greater Than the Sum of Its Parts, which you might relate to. And it's about how you can't understand each loss on its own, because everything happens in context, and each of them, like losing Bhai or losing Lenny, is enough heartbreak for a lifetime. But both together is just unfathomable, really.
You just can't believe that it's happening again, can you? And I'm actually, the bleeding was scarier than I thought I was going to die. I don't know if you ever managed to listen to the episode where I talk about it.
I did.
I just felt like it was just sinking into the bed. I was just losing so much blood, and I just thought, how am I can't even remember how old I was, 26? How am I this young and it's happening and I'm going to die? And just felt like really, I felt unlucky then. It's like, how is this? Because I was poorly when I was younger. I was born with a hole in my heart, so I've had heart surgery a couple of times. But touch wood, the only thing it's ever really stopped me from doing is having children. I managed to have my dream job for 12 years. I'm relatively fit. We like cycling, probably not to the extreme that you guys like cycling.
We really like cycling.
Yeah. And we like woodwork. So we're active, but we're not I'm not crazy fit, but I'm active, and I've done a bungee jump and a skydive, and it's not stopped me from doing things like that. And I was warned when I turned 16 that they wouldn't know how my body would cope if I got pregnant. So it was just don't get pregnant until you are ready. Don't accidentally get pregnant. We won't know what to do. So much like with you doing the research, so you knew what certain words meant and what certain things were because you'd done the research. Or I felt like I was completely prepared because I had been to what they call pregnancy clinics at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. And there was a higher percentage of miscarriage in people with a heart condition that I have, because I had a Fontan operation. More likely to get migraines. I suffer with migraines. So I'm more likely to have premature labour, and because I'm on blood thinners, more likely to bleed anyway, full stop. I don't know if you saw earlier, I had a plaster on my finger because all I did was I picked up the knife from the thing and from the sink, and I cut my finger, and it bled everywhere. It was so ridiculous. So I was already prepared, and what I find hard is that I did everything that I was supposed to do every time.
Oh gosh, yes.
I took
you
the blood thinners.
Yeah.
I changed my diet. I didn't anything I'd ever read that was going to induce labour, like raspberries. I didn't have anything with raspberry in it, because raspberry tea induces labour. So
anything, even I as an example, like raspberry jelly. I thought, no, I'm not going to have anything that's got raspberry in it. I took the blood thinners I was supposed to take. I quit flying, obviously, like that's it. It's changed over the last however many years, but you know, as soon as you're pregnant, you have to be grounded. And yeah, I didn't go to. I know everybody's different because I know that you said that you cycled, but I didn't go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do. Yeah, I was just looked after myself, and it still happened.
Yeah.
And I followed. So to say there's you know, like there's not necessarily a textbook, but when you have the condition that I have, it does come with a sort of like a little set of instructions, and I followed them, and I still lost them every time.
I think what's so difficult about the whole thing, so the whole thing from conceiving to I spoke to someone after I lost Lenny and I was pregnant with Bhai, and I spoke to someone who I've not spoken to for many years, but she shared with me that she'd been through IVF and it'd been successful, but obviously IVF in itself is a stressful, emotional thing. And she just said the whole thing around having babies, you can't hard work your way through it. And it's so true, isn't it? So you do everything right. And I feel like the unluckiness is feeling really strong now. But we, you know, to put this into perspective, we got Bhai's post-mortem results less than a week ago.
Okay.
But like you look on social media and there are people who, I don't want to say just in front of losing a baby, but they haven't just lost a baby.
Mm-hmm.
The baby might have been conceived through IVF, or, you know, people having multiple miscarriages, or, you know, losing a relative during a pregnancy and then their baby dying. And it just it's just so unfair.
It's never just a miscarriage ever. There's
No.
Even so, my first miscarriage was at 7 weeks. So I'd known I was pregnant for. Crikey, I really can't remember, but let's say I missed a period, so maybe I'd known for like a couple of weeks maximum, maybe even only 1 week. And I went straight to the Chelsea Westminster Hospital, and I had my injections, and the nurse taught me how to do my injections. And I didn't drive. It's quite funny actually. My brother took me. My brother is heavily involved in my story because he was with me through the first time and then the second, and then obviously with Isabella. So he is married and has a little boy, and his wife is pregnant. But they had a ectopic pregnancy, so they've been through it as well. And talk about like being unlucky. Curtis saw it happen 3 times with me, and never would you think that it would then happen to you and your wife, that you would lose a baby.
Yeah.
And she lost a fallopian tube as well. So.
Oh. And I think what people don't realise is people assumed. So one of the things that I've found quite difficult, you know, when I said like greater than the sum of its parts, is that there's been a lot of assumption that losing Bhai was easier than losing Lenny. We've received 2 cards after losing Bhai. We received 50 after losing Lenny. A lot more people reached out. Like I said, I think part of that is people not really understanding midterm losses. Also, a lot of people didn't know that I was pregnant. But people, I would not say that losing Bhai is easier. I would say it's different. And different doesn't have to mean better, worse, easier, harder. It's just really different. But in one way, I would say I found losing Bhai a lot more traumatic medically, because people
Mhm.
kind of assumed that Lenny's death was really really traumatic, and his actual death was, but like I told you my birth story, like we were laughing about it a few days later, and like the midwife came to the funeral, and I said to her, like, help me. She remembered that.
The eyes.
Yeah, the eyes, the desperate eyes.
Yeah.
And I think so many people are like, oh, if you lose a baby, oh, how far along were you? And you know what they're thinking is, how bad is it?
Yeah, please don't say
You know,
past 12 weeks, because I'm not going to know what to say to you. Or
yeah,
yeah,
but they're also thinking that, but you could have a 7-week loss that is more medically traumatic, or that affects you personally just as much, or whatever. I just think people don't understand that gestation doesn't kind of determine
how hard
how
it was or how sad it was. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And actually people don't seem to understand that Bai's death isn't easier because we've already had Lenny's death. It's harder. It's not like, oh, we've been through worse. It's, we've lost our full-term healthy baby boy who died in front of our eyes because of an accident, and now we've just lost another baby boy halfway through pregnancy for just a thing that's just happened, and we don't know why, and we'll never know why. And you know, and why I say different is because of things like December will be hard because that is his due date, and I find it hard. I find Bai's death like harder to place, and I can't think of them both together because it's too overwhelming, so I kind of grieve them almost separately. But I think, the other reason why I think this podcast is so important, and all everything that people are doing in terms of talking about it, is that sadly, really, really sadly, maybe the story you told me about your brother, maybe that's not that unlucky, and maybe I'm not that unlucky, because I think if we all spoke about it, we all know somebody.
Absolutely. So it happened to me and my best friend, then it happened to Curtis's wife, and then it's happened to her best friend. So I don't know if you've listened to Claire's story. So Claire and Charlie, who had Hope, that's Faye's best friend.
Okay.
So there's 4 of us, and it's all happened. We
Oh,
all know each other. So it's not 1 in 4; it's 4 in 4.
Yeah.
And it's multiple as well.
Yeah.
It's not just one. And
Yeah.
it wasn't just a miscarriage. We didn't just have a heavy period and carry on with our lives. We all needed some kind of medical intervention.
Exactly. And the compassion I got, huge compassion when Lenny died, huge compassion from the medics, and then huge compassion when Bhai died from the people who knew about Lenny, not so much from the people who didn't. And so that judgment about how bad do we think this is very much in hospitals as well. And and it, and then people at both times, like I'd had a full-term pregnancy, I'd given birth, and people expected me to be like going on 5-mile walks a week later and whatever. Should we meet up and do this? And I'm quite outdoorsy, I'm active, but I'm human.
If he was here, you wouldn't be asking me, because I'd have a 5-week-old baby. So I have a 5-week-old baby body. That's what And oh my god, we haven't even touched on this, but like when your milk comes, did your milk come?
It came twice. It came with Bhai. I said could I have the thing for the milk? And they were like, oh, it won't come in at this
Yeah,
gestation.
that's what they said to me.
And I was thinking, oh, I don't know. And like I said, the people who'd cared for me with Lenny were like, Mim, if you want it, you have it. You can have anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it did come in, and I rang the lovely midwife who I keep referring to, and she was like, I'm so sorry they didn't give it to you. I'll sort it now. And she said to me, can you send someone to get it? And that's what you need. You need somebody to say, because I would have gone myself. Me and Roy would have gone, and we shouldn't have been going to the birth centre to pick up that medication. But oh, it's the worst. Isn't it the worst?
It's the worst. And they were so hot, and they were so sore to touch, and I had a bra and a sports bra. And if the thing was, you would know too, that if I'd expressed to relieve some of it, then it would have kept producing milk. So I didn't want to do that. So I just dealt with it. I just dealt with them.
Yeah. And I was so worried about getting mastitis and having to do all of that. It's just, I don't know, it feels like a massive scandal that this all happens behind closed doors and no one talks about it. And as a researcher, it just feels like the research efforts really aren't matched by, I can't really remember when it was, because this whole year's been a blur, but quite a few months after Lenny died, just really got this feeling that one of the most important things for us was to hear people talk about Lenny as they would have done if he were here. And I found that some people did that really naturally, and some people just didn't. And you know, like one of my friends just started to kind of, you know, Lenny would think this, Lenny would think that. Funnily enough, Lenny would always agree with her.
Brilliant.
But you know, just like bringing him into conversation, and yeah, and those group of friends like still said to me kind of months after, like, we've got some things that we bought for Lenny, and we'd like you to have them. And it's just interesting how different people responded. But we knew that was really important to us. We thought that it might be really important to other parents. And one of the biggest things we were looking forward to was taking Lenny on adventures. So we set up Lenny's Legacy, and it was about taking Lenny on adventures and sharing kind of, and also offering hope. When Lenny died and we went into that bereavement suite, there was like a book that people had written messages in. And then you look on the internet and there's stories of people losing babies. And then there'd be stories of people like 10 years on. And I didn't see much in between. Like, how'd you get there? How, you know, you seem like you can perform basic functions and get dressed and brush your teeth, and you've got clean hair, and like you've got a job and you look quite normal. How do you do that? And we kind of wanted to balance the hope, so to say, like, you know, we're out on a walk or we're out on a bike ride and we're thinking of Lenny, with honesty about our kind of story of grief, because I think it's so misunderstood, and like, it's not all crying in a corner. It's an expression of love, and it's really one of the things that my friend said. She lost her dad very suddenly years ago, and she said to me, your feelings change, and it doesn't mean that they'll get easier, but if you have a feeling that feels quite unbearable, it changes. and we've had some really unbearable times. And I'd say that it's almost like in 24 hours, you'll feel differently, not necessarily better, but different. And then that feels more able to cope with. So yeah, so it was about kind of giving others hope, as well as being honest. And then we lost Bhai, and we thought, we don't really feel like we're giving anyone hope here.
Yeah. I'm not laughing at you. I just think like because I haven't gone on to have a successful pregnancy or any more children, it's just like some people just want to hear a happy ending, don't they?
Oh my gosh, like everyone thinks they live in some sort of Disney film. Like, yeah, like, and then I think that's one of the problems with the toxic positivity. And I've had quite a lot of that, like, oh, at least, or whatever.
Well,
There's no at least. Like, my baby died, and then I have another baby, and he died, and there's no at least. And we don't need to put a pretty bow on everything and have a happy ending, because sometimes there isn't a happy ending, and sometimes shit things happen, and that doesn't make you immune from other shit things happening.
Yeah, but I just think my happy ending is just a little bit different, and it wouldn't be what everybody would sort of describe as a happy ending, because I don't have children. It's people, when we decided that we weren't going to have children and that we didn't want IVF and that we weren't going to adopt, people just couldn't believe it. Like, but your baby died, why don't you want to have another baby? Because sometimes you just know when to stop.
Yeah.
Or it's just going to just ruin our relationship. We're very happy, and having that baby isn't going to make us happier.
Sure. And it's not going to bring Bisbella back.
She's who I want.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
Oh, totally. So that's why we set up Lenny's Legacy, and then we did decide to keep going after Bhai died, because I just thought, I was talking about this unfairness, like we lost a full-term baby in a cord accident, and then we've had this late miscarriage / termination for medical reasons. Like, it's so unfair. And I looked at the statistics, and I thought it must be about 1 in a million to have both. But actually, I thought we can't be alone, and that's why I carried on writing. And I thought, and even if people haven't had our exact situation, like, a lot of this stuff is relatable, and I read a lot of stuff that I found relatable, and that helped me. And for the first time ever, Roy set up an Instagram account, which is like, Roy thinks YouTube is social media, like, seriously.
Yeah.
And we've found it that's quite a supportive community and space, and quite positive for us. And we kind of shared Lenny's Legacy on there. So yeah, December's going to be such a hard time. It's going to be Lenny's first birthday and Bhai's due date, and the second Christmas in a row when we're supposed to be bringing home a baby, and we're not. And we just need to be doing something really different, be in a different space with a different climate. It's going to be summer there, doing something completely different. So we're not sat thinking, oh, we should be doing this and whatever. And it's almost like a reaction that we were talking earlier about, how you can't control things, and how these two things, the obstetrician said to me the other day, in another pregnancy, obviously we'd look after you really well, but you're a low risk woman. And that's really, I can understand what she means is there's nothing wrong. Like, these are two, and so it's kind of like a reaction to all that uncertainty, and is just putting ourselves in maximum uncertainty.
Yeah.
And
Controlled uncertainty.
and to try and trust the world again. And as I said, I work in research, and what I've found overwhelming, even though Lenny couldn't have been saved by more research, because, well, maybe if they develop better scan machines that can see where cords are, because we did have a scan at 38 weeks, actually, maybe better research. I just think the whole piece about baby loss and women's health in general isn't matched by research efforts. And working in research, that's been a real, it's been a real eye-opener for me. I think there's a professor in Manchester, Professor Alex Heasel, and he reckons there's about 3,000 research papers published on stillbirth globally. Which
globally.
Which to put in perspective is about, I don't know, like a tenth of quite a rare form of cancer. Like, it's 3,000 is nothing. So we have ambitions to make a film to talk about baby loss, to kind of try and kind of promote this issue, and like I said, that globally, hopefully. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, keep an eye on Lenny's legacy, and we might have a film.
Yeah. I wish you all the luck.
Yeah, and one of the things that we want to do is not just take Lenny and Bhai on this big adventure, but, you know, honour other people's babies as well. So we're going to have some t-shirts made with names on, and it would be an honour to take Isabella if that would be something that, you know.
Absolutely. She loves to travel. She has a travel bug like her mum, for sure.
Yeah,
that would be lovely. Thank you.
And I don't know about you, but we've always felt closer to the boys in nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But especially when I'm on a plane, I feel like I'm closer to her. Whenever I see a sunset or sunrise or a rainbow, and when I'm in the sea, when I'm on the beach, when we're in the forest. Not that we're in many forests, but we went to California recently, and we went to the redwoods, and it was just so quiet. It was just so peaceful. And we were just miles away from anyone and everything, but apart from her, she's always there. But she's growing with me. I feel like, I don't know how, sort of, it's still, I don't know, I think that, do you see, when you close your eyes or when you're in nature, do you see Lenny as a approaching 1-year-old, or do you see him as the baby in hospital?
I see him as the age he would be now.
Yeah, me too.
So occasionally when we've been out in public, I think I saw a baby who I reckoned was, and this just really shows how babies don't replace other babies, because I was pregnant with Bhai. I'm not saying this to you, I'm saying this to, like, you know, the world needs to understand this. So I was pregnant with Bhai, and I saw somebody who had a baby who I reckoned was Lenny's age, and was a little blonde boy. And it was like a dagger to my heart. Like, I just froze and kind of I was in a shop wanting to buy something, and I just kind of froze and left. And yeah,
that will happen for a long time, I'm not gonna lie. It happens now. I see these. So Isabella's very brown. I don't know if you've seen pictures of her on, not sure if I put a picture of her on the Baby Loss Instagram. She's very brown, and I see like pretty brown girls who could be her age running around, and I often wonder if she'd be a little bruiser and be playing rugby, or whether she'd be dainty and not necessarily playing rugby. And My little nephew, he spends a lot of time with my dad. He just says things like, he says water all the time. He's like, oh, I just need some water. And it's just so funny because they live in West Sussex. They don't live in Auckland, where my dad's from. But because he spent so much time with my dad, so I just wonder, she would have definitely spent that much time with him, and how she would have sounded.
Yeah.
And her little phrases and her walk, you know, like she would have been at school for a couple of years. And oh, if one more person puts a picture of their kid in front of their front door, I feel like putting a picture of my empty front door on Facebook. Like, anyway,
I just think the whole world is so kind of, you know, like, you can tell the people who haven't experienced loss because it's like a sport to them to complain about their children and say, oh, you know, a weekend away from the kids, what a dream. And you're kind of thinking, oh, I've got a lifetime away from mine. And that's hell, actually. So it's hard. It's forever.
Hard.
And I think that is really hard to explain to people unless they've experienced it.
Yeah, it is. It's forever. That's it. She'll never be here. She isn't just. She's not spending the weekend at her dad's. She's dead.
Yeah.
But I do really believe that she's here in spirit, and I think what you're like, you traveling, you and your husband traveling, and taking the boys with you is exactly how I feel I live my life as well. I think it's lovely. She's always here. Like, I just feel like she's always here, and wherever I go, especially, like you say, outside in nature, she's there. And your boys are with you.
Yeah, I just feel like, and don't get me wrong, I have loads of time when I don't feel like doing this, but so much. I just so feel like they had so little time. They had no time. They had no opportunities, and we do.
Yeah.
And that feels like a responsibility to live in their honour and do things for them. Yeah.
I agree with you. They live on through us.
Yeah, definitely.
In 2020, we both worked through the pandemic, and we had a couple of weeks off and we built a canoe, and then it was the following year, 21, when I started the podcast. But we named the canoe, I'm going to ruin it, Hinikoroko, which means lunar rainbow in Maori, because she's our little rainbow, and I don't know, it just sounded, Hinikoroko sounded nicer than, I think, rainbow on its own. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, sort of like lunar rainbow. And we're trying to figure out what to call the new canoe. So we took the new canoe out yesterday, and we were going to the Lake District on Friday, on her birthday, where she'd have been 8. And I think we're going to name the second one Sister in Maori. So obviously Bhai is brother. In Hindi, did you say?
In Hindi.
Yeah. So hopefully we get the template sort of printed on time before Friday, and get Sister written in there on the canoe. They're definitely our children. Like, people can think it's bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty precious about my bikes, so, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that sounds like an amazing way to honour her and to spend her birthday.
Yeah, thank you. We've done it a couple of years in a row now, so yeah. I like to be away on her birthday. I like to be on holiday. I don't like being here. It's weird. I thought I was going to have to go to her grave all the time, but I don't feel like that anymore. I did in the beginning. So do you have your boys' ashes, or are they at the crematorium?
We have Lenny's ashes. And like I said, like we wrote all of Lenny's service and I spoke and all of that, and we tried to donate Bhai's body to medical science.
Okay.
Because I feel so strongly that we need to stop babies dying because it's awful. And they couldn't accept it because of the Bristol scandal and all sorts of legal reasons.
Okay.
And so then we had to decide between a private funeral and a hospital funeral. And we basically couldn't really face a private funeral. And we felt like we'd be putting ourselves through it just to have it at the same place where we cremated Lenny. Like I said, I don't feel like I know Bhai. I know Lenny really well, and it was really easy to write his service. And I don't think I could do that for Bhai, and then it would feel like a lesser thing. So rather than doing something lesser, we went for something different, and we opted for a hospital funeral, especially because we were told at that gestation we'd be really, really unlikely to get any ashes, which kind of made a difference for us. So we have his ashes, and we have Lenny's ashes, and we're going to scatter them at Stanage Edge in the Peak District, which is a really special place to us. And we didn't even have to talk about that. It just came to us and we just knew it. And I spoke to my dad, and he asked if you thought about where you're going to scatter them, and he just wasn't surprised by my answer. So I think everyone was almost, like expecting that. There's a point in the Peak District where you can see for miles, and you can see, but we just haven't
gotten up
done.
Yeah.
Well, we've been up there. We've been up there a few times, but we haven't scattered Lenny's ashes. And it just feels like a step that I'm not ready for. But, there's no time limit on these things, I guess.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me about your boys.
Thank you for listening.
Over the day. Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you. I love listening. Now I'm going to follow your adventures in New Zealand and be extremely jealous that that's where you are. But so very happy for you, because sometimes we need something nice to come out of all of this. And if you get to journey through one of the most beautiful places in the world, then that's something good that's come out of this.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, say hi to Roy.
I will do.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for finding and continuing to listen to the Baby Loss podcast. If you would like to be a guest on my podcast and share your baby story, or if you would like your Baby Loss charity featured, then please get in touch by searching Baby Loss Podcast on your podcast app, Facebook, Instagram and my YouTube channel. If you have been affected by today's episode, then please reach out. SANDS can be reached via their website sands.org.uk, spelt SANDS, their Facebook page and their helpline on 0808 164 3332. Oscar's Wish Foundation is a charity offering bereavement support to families in Sussex and throughout the UK. They can be found on Facebook. If you live in Gloucestershire, you can contact Footsteps Counselling and Care by visiting their website, Facebook page, or contacting their helpline on 01452 308 618. If you require immediate support, you can call the Samaritans 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for free on 116 123. Thank you for listening and see you next time.